Welcome to our second webinar in the Saving Water in 15 Minutes series. So last week we talked about micro irrigation, and today we're going to talk about setting your irrigation sprinkler, timer, controller, time clock, whatever you call it. And then you'll see we have two other webinars offered on using your sprinkler system. So today what we're going to talk about is setting your time clock and making programming changes so that you can run your sprinkler systems easily. I'm Ann Yasalanis. I'm the Residential Horticulture Extension Agent and Master Gardener Coordinator with IFAS Extension here in Polk County. And myself and our Florida Friendly Landscaping Coordinator, Julie Shelb, offer these webinars. And we have Master Gardeners assisting us. All right, so today we're going to talk about setting your irrigation system timer. You'll probably hear me say timer or controller. That's the same thing. And we're going to go through it kind of click by click so you can see exactly what you need to do to set your time clock. There are some options for smart irrigation timers, and we'll cover those really briefly today, but the last webinar in this series will talk a lot more about smart irrigation. So if you kind of have some lingering questions on that, or after this webinar you want to look into some of those, you can bring those questions also to that webinar. And then I'll have some resources at the end as well. Okay, so we're going to go through the process of setting a timer step by step. This is a photo of a bunch of different types of timers, and we've used one timer in the webinar so you can see how you go through and set it. Your timer might not look exactly like these timers, but if you look at them all in the way that they all have a dial or a way to set things, you're going to be setting the same exact things on your timer. You know, like the days to water and how long to water in each zone, all that. So you'll be setting it even if your system looks a little bit different, and you may have a dial or you may have something a little bit different as far as, you know, how to get to each of those things on your time clock. But for today, we're using just the simple timer. And again, brand name doesn't matter. Most timers, simple timers, are going to have kind of this dial system you'll see here in the slide. And most systems, if they have a dial or not, will have you set things kind of in the same order anyway. So this is really important to set. One of the main things I want to mention is that it really is important that although the system is connected to your electrical, it's good to check your battery backup as well. And so if you kind of look in the bottom of this picture of the timer, there's kind of a little gray panel at the bottom. And so we always suggest people that when they have their reminders to check like their smoke alarms in their house, or as there's a time change, all of that stuff is done. And also the batteries in the sprinkler controller are also checked, because we're going to go through and make all these settings. And if we lose power, which can happen even in an afternoon thunderstorm, we don't want to lose all these settings and changes that we made. You'll see as we go through, it's easy to change them, but you may not realize that your timer goes out and then something funny happens. So we're going to get started here. So the first thing with any controller is you have to set the current date and time. So it's going to have you click through, and if you look in this picture here, it actually says on the dial, the first thing that you're going to do is set current date and time. And you use the little buttons that are circled there, plus or minus. So plus means I'm increasing the number, and minus means I'm decreasing the number. So I'm using the plus and minus to say, you know, July 14th, 2020. And you'll see it in the screen reflected there. And most timers will have a screen. So you'll just use those buttons, and you'll use the buttons to go plus, plus, plus to 2020, you know, plus, plus, plus to July, or minus, or whatever you need to do to get to those dates. And you should be able to see it in that. And then you'll advance, and you'll see on this photo here, the dial has now clicked to the next thing. So we've done our current date and time, and we've got it. And we just click our dial to the next item there right below it, which is set the watering start times. Okay. And you can see again, we've got those same buttons that we're going to be using. We'll have to indicate if we want our starting time to be AM or PM. So if you look on the slide there, you see that little kind of orange circle. It's the tiny little circle, and it's hard to see in this photo. But on your time clock, it will have a place that will indicate whether you're on AM or PM. So if you see that little circle, it's on the AM. And if I were to click my button over, it would advance it to PM. And we want to try and water early in the morning. That's the best time to water. And we would like to ideally be done with all of our zones by 10 a.m. So you may have to do a little bit of calculation to figure out how long each zone needs to run and what time you need to start your system to be done by 10. So if you have 5 zones and they all water for 1 hour, you know, you need to go back from 10 at least 5 hours to get it to start. And what that means is many times you have an irrigation system running when you don't ever see it. So it is important to remember that you'll have to go back through every once in a while to make sure everything's functioning. You know, if you never see it, you won't know if a head is broken or something like that. And we want to make sure our program has one start time, or you'll be running multiple programs, and we don't want to do that. So we're starting one start time here using those plus and minus buttons. So it may be 5 o'clock a.m. and you need a plus, plus, plus from midnight to get there, or minus back depending. And then you would click the next button to get to the next thing. So that'll advance you to the next setting. So if we're looking at 5 o'clock a.m., you may go plus, plus, plus from midnight to get to 5, hit the next button to get to, you know, 00 for the minutes. And then you would just click to the next dial there. And at this point, you're going to be setting your station run times. So in your sprinkler system, you should probably know how many zones you have. So you're going to set each zone how many minutes to water. So if you have 4 zones, you'll do this 4 times. If you have 2 zones, you do it 2 times, and so on and so forth. Okay, so you need to know how long to run each zone. And you would know this if you did a sprinkler system calibration. And that's how you measure your irrigation water in inches, and it will tell you how long to do that. And I have a link at the end of the slideshow that has a PDF handout that tells you how to go through your sprinkler system to measure. And we'll actually be talking about that at next week's webinar as well. So I would consider doing this before you set your run times, because otherwise you really have no basis on knowing how long each area needs to be watered. So we're setting a separate run time for each zone. And again, you'll use your plus and minus buttons to add or decrease time. And each time you click next, it'll go to the next station. So you can see here it says zone 1, 25 minutes. If you were to click to next, it'd say zone 2, and then you'd use the plus and minus buttons to increase or decrease that run time. So what days of the week are you going to water? That will depend on your watering restrictions based on your house number. So you would do that. You can see there that kind of orange oval that we have will tell you how long, what days of the week are indicated. So you'll use your plus and minus buttons and next to get there. Do you need to water 2 days a week? You can set it for that, or you can change that setting as well. So during the fall and winter months, your grass and planting beds require less water. And in the summer, if they're daily rains, you might be able to turn your system off. And I actually find it's easier to set the system based on a 2 days a week watering restriction. And then as needed, I just turn the whole system to system off. And you see that on the zone there. So rather than going back through and doing a bunch of edits, like during the summer months, my system just sits at off. So here you'll see program, and you can see there, if you end up that you find you're using a lot of water, you've had some issues with overwatering or very high water bills, it could be that you're running multiple programs. So double check your timer. Controllers typically have capacity to run multiple programs. So that means that your irrigation controller can be set to water different parts or zones of the landscape at different rates. So for example, if you have a program A, it might be set to water 6 rotor zones for 60 minutes twice a week. And then maybe new plants are planted in a planting bed, and they might need more frequent watering until they're established. And then a second program B could be used to then water that zone every day. You know, if you've got new plantings going in, you'd be watering them every day. But for your normal weekly 2-day maintenance watering, only one program is necessary. So you can see if you have a program A and a program B set to water, program A will run, and then program B will run. So make sure that you only have one set at a time. And then you can see here, after you've set everything, you set your days to water. We've run through to the other side of the dial now. If you, for some reason, need to manually run one system, you can do that by just turning the dial to the manual single station. That might be you're just checking through things to see if everything's working. If you need to manually run all stations for some reason, or if you need to turn your system to off, there should be a selection for that as well. And you can go through and set it to run automatically as well. If you are interested or have a smart timer, this is what some of the screenshots of how those work. And those smart timers are great because you can operate them with your phone or tablet, and there's quite a few on the market that are easy to use. On the left, you see HydroWise, and on the right is called Irrigation. And the smart timers give you weather information and are connected to your rain shutoff device. So they water only when needed. And you can view your system's run times and dates. And you can see that in the screenshots here of some of that information that you'll get. So with both systems that I've used, you get a very similar screen to that one on the left where it talks about the weather and temperature and what's going on in your landscape. You can see on that far left too, it has all of the different zones and that sort of thing. And the one on the right shows when you're currently scheduled to water. If you see where it says water delay, maybe rainfall occurred and no irrigation is needed at that time. And here additionally, you can see how they show each zone. This is one of the features that I like the most, is because I don't have to remember what part of the yard zone one waters anymore. I know that I can look at the photo or the description and say, okay, backyard right, I know where that is. That's that zone. And so you can manually run zones from that screen. And there's all of that other information on there as well, as far as moisture, soil moisture and all of that. And that's really nice if you're doing any maintenance. You can be out in the backyard checking the zone and run to your next zone just by having your phone in your pocket. And we will talk more about those in a couple of weeks. And finally, just a few things to remember as you set your controller. If there's any zones you can zero out, meaning these plantings are established, they're drought tolerant, you don't need to have any runtime on those, you can do that. If you have to create more than one program, again, just double check and make sure, but you may want more than one program if you have new plantings that have to be watered daily, or you have micro irrigation zones that are watered a different way. Just make sure you're familiar with how to use your timer and at least set one program before you get into doing some creative multiple programs, just to be careful. And remember what I mentioned about those battery backups. This is a list of resources, and I'll send this out to you as well. Let me mention that third one down there talks about calibrating or measuring your sprinkler system application. That's the calibration that I mentioned at the beginning, and that shows you how to do that. And then there's some other information on your setting your timer in those resources listed as well. The Polk Regional Water Cooperative, depending on your water utility, may be offering some rebates on some of these things. So for example, the smart irrigation controllers, I know some of the water utilities, such as Polk County Water Utilities, are offering rebates if you're interested in changing out your existing timer to a smart timer. Look into that and see what they offer. You need to contact your water utility and say, I'm interested in the water conservation rebates. What do you have? Additionally, if you do that, you may want to check your rain sensor to make sure it is functioning as well. That's definitely something you'd want to do as you're going through and checking your time clock. All right, well, thank you so much, and we will see you here next week.